Welcome to Buried Evidence. I'm your host, Katie. This episode contains graphic descriptions of violence, including sexual assault, murder, and cruelty to animals. Listener discretion is advised. The FBI has published thousands of documents, including case files, photos, audio and video of interviews with suspects that took place in the course of their investigations, and sound bites from agents discussing cases that are subject to frequent FOIA requests. These documents are publicly available on the FBI's vault, free of charge. We have used this information along with several other sources to bring you a detailed and accurate account of this case. Part 1. Samantha. In March of 2012, Kimberly had been in a long-term relationship with a man whom she affectionately referred to as Izzy for over 5 years. They lived together in a modest home in Anchorage, Alaska, with Izzy's young daughter. The couple had broken up over the summer but continued living together with a plan for him to move out when the school year ended for his daughter. Kimberly's job in the medical field required several weeks of travel throughout the year, meaning that at times she was traveling for work more than she was at home. Kimberly owned the home they shared on Spur Lane in Anchorage, and with Izzy's job as a general contractor, he performed work on the house in exchange for rent payments to Kimberly. Neither appeared to be involved in drugs or have a criminal record. In fact, Izzy was a dutiful father, a veteran, and a business owner, and Kimberly's job and medical license would require her to stay out of trouble with the law. So when Kimberly received a call out of the blue to come down to the Anchorage Police Department to be interviewed by the FBI and the Anchorage Police while they tore apart her home searching for evidence to connect her boyfriend, Israel Keys, to the abduction of a missing girl named Samantha Koenig, she was justified in her disbelief, shock, and horror at the accusation. Kimberly had heard of Samantha because how could she not? There were flyers all over Anchorage, and news reports had been commenting on the missing girl for weeks. But what did this have to do with them? There must be some misunderstanding. Kimberly was completely blindsided and had a difficult time understanding what was going on. Not only did they conduct a search of her home, but they impounded her car and took her cell phone, leaving her stranded after the interview concluded. Kimberly could never have imagined what she was about to learn about the kind, soft-spoken man that she had been dating for so many years. You see, Israel Keys was a master of disguise. He tricked everyone he ever met into believing he was something he wasn't. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and under his good guy persona was a monster that he kept hidden very, very well.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really. They know they're going to tell you something that does not line up with anything I tell you because I'm two different people, basically. And the only person who knows about what I'm telling you, the kind of things I'm telling you, is me.
How long have you been two different people?
Long time. 14 years.
Israel Keys was arrested in connection to the abduction and murder of Samantha Koenig on March 13, 2012. Through several hours of interviews with investigators, they learned the gruesome details of her murder and found that Keys was not only responsible for Samantha's death, but that the person they were dealing with was a prolific serial killer who had remained undetected for a period of over 14 years. Samantha Koenig was born August 30th, 1993, in Anchorage, Alaska. She was just 18 years old and lived with her dad, James, and her boyfriend, Dwayne, on February 1st, 2012. This was the night Samantha was abducted from Common Grounds Coffee, where she worked as a barista, a job she had only recently taken within the last couple of months. On this night, Samantha was working the evening shift at the coffee stand, and because there was literally only room for about 1 or 2 people to move around inside, Samantha was working alone. The small building was painted a bright shade of blue and sat in a parking lot across the street from the local Home Depot in Midtown Anchorage. As Samantha was getting ready to close up the shop just before 8 o'clock that evening, she let Dwayne know that she planned to walk home after her shift ended. You see, Samantha shared a vehicle with Dwayne, and on this night, he had the truck. So when Samantha couldn't get in touch with her cousin, whom she planned to get a ride from that night, Dwayne insisted she wait for him to get there so she wasn't walking home in the dark. Dwayne made arrangements with his boss to let him clock out so he could pick her up and take her home. At 8:33 p.m., Dwayne arrived at the shop to pick up Samantha. But when he got there, everything was completely dark, and Samantha was nowhere to be found. He drove around the shop, parked, got out, and looked through a window and saw that everything was closed up. Dwayne noted that the wooden slides used to block the windows were in place and all the lights were off. He noticed some napkins on the floor, and the towels used to clean the countertops were still sitting out. He recalled this detail as a little odd since Samantha was very neat and tidy, but since that was the only thing out of place, he didn't think much of it. He decided not to try and enter the building out of fear he would set off an alarm and be accused of breaking in. He called and texted Sam repeatedly throughout the evening with no reply, until 11:24 p.m. when he received a strange text message from Samantha's number that said, "F you, asshole. I know what you did. I'm going to spend a couple of days with friends. Need time to think, plan, acting weird. Let my dad know." A second text came in at 11:53 p.m., which just had the letters, "F you." Dwayne didn't think the text messages came from Samantha because the style of writing didn't sound like her, and she would never completely ignore both Dwayne and her dad. She was very close with her dad, James, and Samantha had always, at the very least, picked up the phone and let one of them know where she was going if she needed space. He really didn't think it was like her to just take off without talking to one of them.
I was trying to keep the phone turned off anytime I was around my place, but I had to send a bunch of text messages to people who were calling, and I was asking her, like, who's this, who's that, and then I would send them a text message. And
So you sent the text messages?
basically tell them, try to make it sound like she was pissed off at everybody or something.
Did you send the texts?
Yeah.
There was one to her employer?
Yep.
And to her boyfriend?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Anyone else?
No, I think in the one to her boyfriend, I put in something about he should let Dad know that, she wasn't going to be back or she was pissed off or something. And after that, I pulled the battery out of the phone.
What's that do? Why do you do that?
I can't track it, as far as I know.
Why not just shut it off?
I'm paranoid.
The following day, Dwayne and James contacted the owner of Common Grounds to look at surveillance video footage from the night before. At first, they didn't see anything unusual on the tapes, until they realized they'd pulled the footage from the wrong night. When they looked at the correct footage from the night before, they could plainly see that Samantha had been abducted. The surveillance video showed a man come to the window, order a coffee, and then a moment later you see Samantha put her hands up, indicating she had a gun pointed at her. Then she turns the lights off, grabs the cash from the register, and hands it over to the gunman before the gunman makes his way into the shop through the window. A moment later, you see them leave together on foot. The Anchorage Police Department was called to report the abduction, and investigators began pulling surveillance video footage of the parking lots near the coffee shop. The video footage shows a white Chevy extended cab truck with what appears to be a box-like object in the bed of the truck drive through the Home Depot parking lot and park east of the IHOP at 7:54 p.m. Footage revealed someone in the distance wearing black clothing and a hat get out of the truck and walk westbound through the parking lot and continue in the direction of Common Grounds Coffee. Investigators noted that the clothing worn by the person in the parking lot matched the clothing worn by the person seen in the video abducting Samantha. Several minutes later, the surveillance footage showed Samantha and her abductor leave the scene in the same white pickup truck.
I parked my truck over by the Dairy Queen side of Home Depot and walked by.
What was your plan when you went there on February 1st?
My plan was exactly what I did, but I was playing it by ear, but that's just the way they went. Yeah, kind of lost self-control, I guess you could say.
Why do you say that?
Because there were some things I wasn't counting on once I started talking to her, like the fact that she didn't have a car there, and
why did that make a difference?
Because I did not want her in my truck, but I was feeling a little invincible, I guess you could say.
Why were you feeling invincible at that time?
Because she was scared. And she did everything I said. And had a adrenaline rush, I guess. Just decided to do it, see what happened. And, you guys have the video, so you know what happened.
Yeah, but I kind of want to get from your perspective when you went in there to the Common Grounds coffee stand. Did you intended to take her?
No, I was open at that point, because I didn't know who was going to be there. So No.
Open to what?
To whatever. I mean, I was pretty determined that I was at least gonna rob the place. I had my police scanner on me, and I had it in my ear, and there was something else going on the other side of town, so I knew there weren't gonna be any cops in that area. There wasn't a lot of traffic. It was starting to snow.
Yeah, we're going.
Yep. 22 Taurus. I think I had 2 shot shell cartridges in it, and the rest was loaded with shorts. Alright, so I crossed over the same way I left. I walked out of the IHOP parking lot, across Denali, walked down the sidewalk to the light on Tudor and Denali, crossed the Tudor there, and started walking at the east. And just went up to the window. She was getting ready to close up. It looked like she was cleaning up, and ordered a coffee.
Americano.
Yep. And right at the corner there, on my left of that driveway that goes in, there was a car parked right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And at the back of that car, laying on the ground, was a pretty nice Canon camera. You probably found it in my trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that as a good omen, I guess. Like I say, I was probably kind of invincible. I was like, wow, this is a nice camera. And I just left it there, but then after, when I was walking her back, I picked it up, took it with me. Yeah, right. Picked up the camera right at that corner, walked right straight out to Tudor, started walking back west. She tried running right 50 yards after we walked out of that turnout. Right there.
What'd you do?
Tackled her. And, yeah, she was in the coffee shop. I wasn't planning on walking her anywhere. I was planning on the fact that she would have a car there. There were people everywhere. There was someone sitting right across the road there from the Alaska Club. There's a car dealership. There's a driveway that comes out onto the road there. There was someone sitting right there watching me order the coffee. And they sat there for a long time, even after I pulled the gun. They didn't see the gun, obviously. I guess they thought I was just talking to her, but I could tell they were suspicious. They were just sitting there watching. And so I just waited. I just kept talking to her and told her to turn off the lights and turn off the open signs and stuff. And eventually they pulled out and drove off. And then I waited. No, I didn't wait. I think as soon as they pulled out, I already had her get on her knees and back up to the window and put cable ties on her hands.
Were those the cable ties you bought at Home Depot earlier?
I've got cable ties. I have them everywhere. I had a bunch of them.
Did you know about the surveillance cameras in the coffee shop?
Well, I could see them. Yeah, I wasn't worried about it because I had on that black jacket, and it was, like I say, it was pretty cold and it was snowing out. I didn't have any glasses on, but I had. I think I cut off the arm of a long sleeve t-shirt. I think that's what I used for the mask on that one. And, had that pulled up almost to my eyes. Even when I walked up to the coffee shop, I don't think she ever saw my face. And, yeah, and she was saying, well, there's surveillance. You don't want to rob this place because we don't have that much money. There's alarms and all this stuff. And so I was, almost right there. I just almost took the money and just left her tied up.
Even with the video footage of Samantha's abduction, police are taught that most crimes are committed by the people closest to the victim. So this is where investigators began their search for answers. They questioned Dwayne about his relationship with Samantha. He told police that at times things had been rocky, but that they had been good lately. When the detectives looked at some of the text messages on his phone, it was apparent that they'd been fighting. But Dwayne was adamant that things were good between them. When police asked Dwayne about why he didn't report Samantha missing when she wasn't at the coffee stand, he said he thought police wouldn't do anything until she'd been missing for at least 24 hours. In the same interview with police, Dwayne reported a strange incident from the night before. He told detectives that at 3 a.m. he saw a man wearing a mask going through Samantha's vehicle, which was parked just outside their house. When he woke the next morning, he found that her ID and debit card were the only things missing from the vehicle. Police were suspicious of Dwayne at first and asked why he didn't report seeing the man in the car. Sadly, Dwayne thought Samantha had just sent someone to get some of her things for her. What Dwayne didn't know at the time is that Samantha's abductor had actually gotten the keys to Samantha's truck, driven to her house where it was parked, and retrieved her ID and debit card. And then he was actually caught by Dwayne in the act.
Yeah, I just told her to chill out and that I was gonna go get the card and then I was gonna, get everything set up.
What did you mean by that?
The money set up. And, she told me the PIN, but I didn't write it down. So by then I was thinking I didn't have much time to get all this done, so I think once she was in the shed, I waited a little bit longer, and I think finally went to bed maybe around 2 or 2:30 or something. And then I took the car, and she gave me her home address. And I went down and I pulled it up on MapQuest and printed out a map of the street she said she lived on and took it out there and had her show me exactly where her truck was parked. And parked about 3 or 4 blocks away from where her truck was and walked over there. And used the key to open the door, and the car was right where she said it would be. And I was just locking the truck up, and some guy came out and obviously knew something was up right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just standing there waiting to see what he would do. I don't even think I had my gun with me, but I had a knife. And he just turned around and ran back in the house. So I just ran down the street and
What else did you take from him?
just a wallet. I think I just took the whole wallet. There was a bunch of stuff in the wallet. I think the only thing I checked to make sure was in the wallet was maybe your driver's license and the card. And the rest of the stuff, I didn't really look what was in there. I just grabbed the whole thing. Locked the truck back up and walked back to, or actually I ran back down the road, went behind a snowbank and looked back out on the road to make sure he hadn't come back out and was watching. And then when I didn't see anybody, I jumped back in his car and took off. And I was going to go to the ATM right away to make sure she'd given me the right PIN number, but then I realized I hadn't written it down, so I had to go back to my house and talk to her. She gave it to me, and I scratched it on the front of the card.
You asked her if there was going to be any money in the account?
She told me there wasn't any money in the account.
So why'd you try to use it?
To make sure it was the right PIN. And, yeah. I mean,
So you checked it out. You went, used the card.
well, yeah. I think, yeah, maybe I did check the balance just to see. I mean, I was pretty sure she was telling the truth, that there wasn't any money in it, but I just wanted,
Why is that?
because she didn't have a car to drive, I figured there probably wasn't any money in the account. So, yeah, that wasn't really the issue. I wasn't after the card at that point.
What were you after?
I mean, I wasn't after money off the card at that point, I should say.
What were you after?
That was just a bonus
Bonus to what?
to the whole thing. If I could eventually get some money out of the card, then that was the plan.
It sounds like there's something more to the story.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more to the story. I don't know if I'm going to tell the whole story today, though.
ATM footage pulled from the Denali Alaskan Federal Credit Union at 3:30 a.m. that night revealed an individual matching the description of the person that abducted Samantha used the ATM card that had been taken from the vehicle to check the balance. There was only about $5 in the account at the time, and the account was a joint account with Samantha and Dwayne. So when Dwayne was questioned about the account, he said he knew for a fact that the last activity on the account was January 31st, when he used the account to cash a check for $30. Weeks went by without a word from Samantha, and police didn't seem to be getting any closer to finding her. Unable to sit idly by and just wait for something to happen, James Koenig took action in the community and created a GoFundMe page to raise rewards funds to try and generate leads for Samantha's safe return. He posted flyers in the community and engaged the media to help spread her story. The reward fund grew to over $70,000 in the weeks after her disappearance. James was desperate to get his daughter back safely. He posted urgent pleas to his daughter's abductors on Facebook, and on February 16th, James again took to his Facebook page to say, quote, "Please find it in your heart to help Samantha. Even if you come to me, I will guarantee your safety and set you up with enough money to start anew somewhere of your choosing. As long as the result is her returning to me safely and unharmed, anything less, I will devote my life and resources to hunting down the individuals responsible for stealing my life from me." End quote. This last post would cause investigators to look at Samantha's father from a different lens. To most of the world, they can see that this is a father who's desperate to get his daughter back in one piece. But to investigators, they suspected that if James Koenig had information about the details of the identities of Samantha's abductors and the reasons behind her abduction, he might not be forthcoming with that information. The potential interference with their investigation could threaten to derail the case. Witness interviews conducted throughout the investigation also raised concerns about James' focus on the reward money. These suspicions would cause tension between the Koenig family and police. Throughout the course of the investigation, police received multiple tips from people in the community with information about what they thought had happened to Samantha. But as the days dragged on, investigators tracked down lead after lead, interviewing witnesses, looking at surveillance footage, and putting theories together, which ultimately led them nowhere. The Anchorage Police Department called in the FBI to assist with the investigation. And on February 24th, the investigation finally got a break when, after weeks of silence from Samantha, Dwayne received a text message from Samantha's phone that read, "Connor Park sign, under pick of Albert, ain't she purty?" Immediately after the text came in, APD officers met Samantha's family at Connor Park. Attached to the park sign, below a flyer for a lost dog named Albert, was a Ziploc bag which contained a folded piece of paper and a photo. The photo appeared to be of Samantha. Her eyes are open, and you can see a person's arm with a latex-gloved hand in the lower corner holding her by her hair, which had been braided. The photo also contained the front page of the Anchorage Daily newspaper dated Monday, February 13th, 2012. It was not entirely clear in the photo if Samantha was alive or dead. On the backside of the folded piece of paper was a ransom note, typed with a typewriter and carbon ribbon, demanding $30,000 with instructions for which bank account the money should be deposited to. The account referenced the 16-digit card number that had been taken from the car the night Samantha disappeared and stated that the writer of the note intended to withdraw money at regular intervals over the coming days and in locations other than Alaska. There was no deadline for when to deposit the funds, and in exchange for the ransom money, the author would text the location of a packet of information which would provide law enforcement with all the information they needed to find Samantha and return her within, say 6 months to a year after receiving the money. It said, quote, "I may not use the card much in AK due to small pop, but as I will be leaving soon, I will be using it all over. She did almost get away twice, once on Tudor and once in the desert. Must be losing my touch," end quote.
The note at Connor Park.
Well, let's talk about that. There was a text sent.
Right.
And did you send that text?
Yeah. Like I say, you got your monster. I'm the only one who knows about it.
Do you remember even generally what the text said?
Yeah. Connor Park, under the pick of Alfred, which I think was a lost dog. Ain't she purty?
Where'd you get the idea for that?
Well, I don't know. Thought she was purty.
There were so many questions. Was Samantha still in Alaska? Was Samantha alive when that picture was taken? Police suspected that Samantha had not left Alaska, and there are no deserts in Alaska. This part of the ransom note could have been an attempt to throw investigators off the trail, but as we will learn, there is so much more to the story. We'll come back to the ransom note later, but I am haunted by that line because as we come to learn, Israel Keyes is a serial killer. And if Samantha is still in Alaska, who tried to get away in the desert? The photo of Samantha was meant to serve as proof of life, but there were several issues. For one, the date of the newspaper was from February 13th, which was 11 days ago by then, and it wasn't completely obvious if Samantha was actually alive in the picture. Her eyes were open, but her face was expressionless. Investigators couldn't be sure one way or the other, but they used this new development in the case as an opportunity to try and catch the person who was responsible for Samantha's abduction, and held out hope that they could bring her home safely. By this point, it had also become apparent that James and Dwayne likely had nothing to do with her disappearance. A plan was hatched, and with the assistance of the FBI, James Koenig was instructed to deposit $5,000 into the account specified on the ransom note on February 29th. The plan was to deposit money into the ransom account, and and when the suspect made withdrawals from the account, police would be able to track the card activity and arrest their suspect. Like clockwork, the same night the funds were deposited, 2 attempts to withdraw money were made. These ATM transactions were made in Anchorage, meaning their suspect was still in Alaska. Police pulled surveillance footage from a parking lot with a view of the ATM used by the suspect and saw, you guessed it, a man dressed in a black hooded sweatshirt and black pants. But this time he was driving a light-colored SUV. It would later be determined to be a silver Nissan Xterra belonging to Key's girlfriend, Kimberly. Over the next 2 weeks, approximately 6 ATM withdrawals were made from the ransom account using the stolen debit card. This included the withdrawal in Alaska, as well as Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, along Interstate 10 headed east. Keyes was careful not to use the card at any retail locations, just ATMs. Investigators were indeed able to track the withdrawals, but they were always about 10 minutes behind him. The case file states that each time Keyes went to an ATM, he demonstrated, quote, excellent preparation and patience in the selection of outdoor ATMs located in areas that had very little late-night traffic, end quote. Always the meticulous planner, Keyes made sure the vehicle was parked away from surveillance cameras, sometimes parking in adjacent lots, and he thoroughly scanned the area before exiting his vehicle. He was always covered in dark clothing, gloves, a mask, hood, and glasses. Investigators engaged experts to enhance the video footage in an effort to identify the vehicle he was driving, the clothing he was wearing, and any other clues that could help investigators uncover their suspect's identity. Initially, they had very little to go on, except that it appeared the suspect was an adult male with light skin tone and an athletic muscular build. Police coordinated near real-time responses each time Keyes transacted at an ATM, but each time an ATM was used, Keyes was able to leave the scene before police could get there. They seemed to be just one step behind him, but they stayed hot on his trail. ATM withdrawal footage taken on March 7th from a bank in Wilcox, Arizona, revealed a big clue. It showed what appeared to be a late model white Ford Focus. This was their first look at the vehicle their suspect was driving. A bolo was issued with still shots of the ATM footage and the description of the Ford Focus, noting that the vehicle was likely a rental. This along with information about Samantha's case. The bolo was distributed to law enforcement agencies all along the I-10 corridor. The painstaking hours that went into the investigation, tracking their suspects' movements, and working with other agencies was all about to pay off, big time. On March 13th, a police officer in Texas read the bulletin with the details of the Koenig case and the description of the person making the ATM withdrawals. He was asked by his superior to try and locate the white Ford Focus seen in the surveillance footage. The officer was instructed to check motels, rest stops, and truck stops in the area. At about 11 a.m., Texas Ranger Stephen Rayburn and FBI agent Deborah Ganaway received notification that Patrol Corporal Brian Henry had located a white Ford Focus parked in the Quality Inn and Suites in Lufkin, Texas. The Texas Ranger and FBI agent drove over to the Quality Inn together and walked around the Ford Focus to visually inspect the vehicle. Agent Ganaway noticed a barcode sticker on the driver's side back passenger window that's commonly found on rental vehicles. They ran the plate number and confirmed the vehicle was in fact a rental. Officers peered into the window and could see some trash, debris, and other items, but most notably they saw a pink article of clothing that looked like it belonged to a woman. About 15 minutes later, officers observed a white man with a slim, muscular build leave the Quality Inn from room 215. The man placed a few items in the trunk of the vehicle and left the parking lot alone. Corporal Henry followed behind Keyes as he drove out of the Quality Inn, and a few moments later pulled him over for driving 58 in a 55. Keyes pulled over in the Cotton Patch Cafe's parking lot, where the officer asked Keyes for his license and asked him to step out of the vehicle. He handed the officer his Alaska driver's license and said that he was in Texas for his sister's wedding. The officer could see a knife and a Leatherman wave tool in his pocket and asked him to place them on the trunk of the car. Keyes maintained his composure and calmly followed the officer's instructions. He told the officer he'd flown in from Anchorage to Las Vegas on March 7th before renting the Ford Focus at the Las Vegas airport. They questioned him, asking him about his travels and how he paid for gas. While Keyes was being questioned, he became agitated and refused to allow officers to search his wallet or the vehicle. He also became visibly nervous and started to sweat profusely. Keyes had been traveling with his young daughter, but at the moment she he was with his family. Keyes told Special Agent Ganaway that if he was going to be kept a while, he wanted to call his brother and let him know. Agent Ganaway suggested he make that call. He would indeed be there a while. Keyes was then placed under arrest, and his wallet was searched at the scene, where the stolen debit card was discovered with the pin scratched onto the front. I just have to point out that when Keyes was arrested, he tells investigators that he'd been traveling with his daughter to visit family for a wedding. So this means that while he was traveling through the Southwest and making all of those late-night ATM withdrawals, covered head to toe like a creeper, parking far away from the poorly lit ATM machines, he had his young daughter with him. As a mother myself, I am horrified. Keyes tells investigators in a future interview that he was losing control and having a difficult time keeping his two lives separate. To me, this is proof that he was spiraling, and he was very clearly unable to hide his true self in front of the one person he claims to care the most about in his life. Police transported Keyes to the Lufkin, Texas Police Department and put him into an interview room where he was read his rights. Keyes chose not to talk, and he was charged with access device fraud related to the ATM withdrawals. A search of the Ford Focus produced several items of evidence that would connect Keyes to Samantha's abduction. Investigators found Samantha's cell phone, a laptop computer, and a pair of white and gray tennis shoes, a gray hoodie, a pair of amber-colored shooting glasses, a piece of gray fabric that appeared to be cut from the sleeve of a t-shirt, and 3 large rolls of cash in the driver's side door panel. They also collected items from Keyes' wallet and person. Most of the items were things you would expect to find, like credit cards and insurance cards. But they also found a few items that would help tie Keyes to other crimes later, specifically a Vermont fishing license issued on June 8th, 2011, and a Walmart money card. They also found various receipts and a Panasonic flip phone. You'll want to remember that Vermont fishing license. It comes up later. After Keyes' arrest, detectives in Anchorage drove over to Keyes' house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. There were fresh tire tracks in the driveway, as if someone had just left that morning, and a white 2004 Chevy Silverado with a large toolbox in the bed was discovered in the driveway. The truck matched the description of the truck seen on the Home Depot surveillance video the night Samantha was abducted. After talking to Kimberly, they also learned she drove a 2007 silver Nissan Xterra, the vehicle observed on ATM surveillance footage in Anchorage. Keyes was later interviewed by police in the presence of his attorney. In this interview, he admitted to using the stolen debit card, but made up a story about how he came into possession of the cell phone and the debit card. He told investigators that he found the debit card and cell phone, which were together in a plastic baggie, and placed in his pickup by some anonymous stranger while it was parked in his driveway in Anchorage. He had absolutely no knowledge of who put them there. I think it's a little ironic that this guy who took such great care to conceal his identity, cover his tracks, and remain undetected for so long would make such careless mistakes leading to his capture. Israel Keyes was maybe the most cautious and prepared serial killer that I've ever heard of, but even in 2012, there were cameras everywhere. You would have to be pretty naive to think the cops couldn't track your movements with that ATM card. And then once caught, this is the best you can come up with. Criminals are so dumb, even the smart ones. Keyes was transported back to Anchorage and arraigned on March 27th on access device fraud charges related to the stolen debit card. He was appointed a public defender and agreed to be interviewed by police. On March 30th, 2 interviews were conducted with Keyes. The first interview consisted of investigators laying out the evidence they had, which showed Keyes how he was connected to their case. Keyes requested to talk with his attorney and a few hours later agreed to a second interview, but with a strict set of conditions that investigators were forced to agree to if Keyes was going to talk. Authorities were forced to make a deal with the devil and agreed to keep the details of his confession out of the media. Keyes warned investigators that if information was leaked, he would stop giving interviews, a tactic he would deploy frequently in interviews with investigators over the coming months. This particular interview, sadly, would shatter any hopes of finding Samantha alive, as Keyes admits to killing Samantha and gives the location of her body.
Well, they're going to need to know where she was from the time that you took her on the 1st until the end of February. And I know you don't want to disrupt a lot of people, but it's going to be important for these guys to know.
What? Why does it matter where she was? I mean, she was in the shed. I mean, she wasn't anywhere else. There were no other addresses or vehicles involved.
Next time on Buried Evidence.
I put my head right up to her ear and I said, "You knew this was coming."
Join me for part 2, The Confession, out now, where we find out exactly what happened to Samantha from Keyes in his own words. Please subscribe to Buried Evidence wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to leave a rating and a review. Thank you for listening.